立法會主席。
President.
We
now resume the second reading of the Chinese Medicine Amendment Bill 2017. Ms. Alice Mack, Chairman of the Bills Committee, will report to this Council. Ms. Alice Mack. Persons, as Chairman of the Bills Committee on Chinese Medicine Amendment Bill 2017, I would like to highlight the deliberation of the Bills Committee. The Bills Committee held 5 meetings with the administration, and we also listened to views from deputation individuals. Members support the bill, which would empower the Director of Health that if he has reasonable cause to believe that certain Chinese material, Chinese proprietary medicines, or in the processing and manufacturing of such proprietary Chinese medicine, or the contents or compounds contained within the harm or cause or injurious to health, or are not fit for public consumption, or may be injurious to public health, he can issue a Chinese medicine safety order to prohibit the sale and supply of such products, or to recall such products so as to protect public health. Some members are concerned that in the market there are Chinese medicine material as effective ingredients contained in various orally taken products such as bottled drinks. As they are not defined under the Chinese medicine ordinance as proprietary Chinese medicine, they are not covered by the ordinance. If this bill is passed, these products are not covered by the Chinese medicine safety order. Members are concerned about the public health implications of such risk. Most members think that the administration should respond to the aspirations of the industry and carry out a comprehensive review to the ordinance expeditiously. According to the administration, they are now reviewing the definition of proprietary Chinese medicines under the ordinance so as to strengthen the regulation of the industry. The Chinese Medicine Council of Hong Kong has set up or the Chinese Medicine Board under the Chinese Medical Council of Hong Kong has set up a working group to look into this. Depending on the recommendations and the views of the Chinese Medicine Board, the government would wide consultation on any proposed definition changes to the Chinese medicine, proprietary Chinese medicine in the ordinance. As for the and amendments will be proposed in another exercise. As for the concrete timetable for reviewing the ordinance itself, the administration promised to consult with the Chinese medicine industry again, and will report to the panel on health services on the road ahead. Members noted that the Director of Health may direct that anyone should stop the sale or recall from the market any Chinese medicine product which may be harmful to public health. Some members are concerned whether under the regular market monitoring mechanism on the Chinese medicine material, and whether the sampling and the standards for the relevant tests will be effective to ensure that the Chinese medicine safety order can be effectively implemented. And they think that there should be step-up monitoring of the import, wholesale and retail of Chinese medicine material so as to recover the substandard materials. And there should be an updating of the pesticide residues and heavy metal standards so as to align ourselves with international standards. And there should be suitable method to see if the Chinese medicine material available in the market will pose a health risk, and if necessary, issue a safety order. On Chinese proprietary medicine, members think that the scope of inspection should cover retail outlets. There should be supplies and regular inspections as well. Some members think that the administration should also step up the monitoring of the intermediate products in the production of Chinese proprietary medicine. In the long term, there should be further standards promulgated to ensure the safety and quality of Chinese proprietary medicines. Some members have also got have expressed concerns about the relevant procedures for the recall of relevant products in the future, and whether anyone should shoulder the legal liabilities in the process. Members were assured by the administration that in the future, when the safety order is executed, the Department of Health would work out the relevant details and relevant time frame with the affected people in respect of the people affected by the safety order. And then there will also be the updating of the guideline on the recall of the Chinese medicine products, so as to help the licensee and the relevant distributor to set up an effective control mechanism, so that when this is found out that certain Chinese medicine products are unfit for consumption or may harm the public health, or they would be able to recall all the products as far as possible and within these applicability, the feasibility of the circumstances. And there are also defenses are provided in the bill, and an appeal mechanism can allow those who are affected by the safety order to lodge an appeal to the Director of Health. We have considered some of the proposed amendments technically and consequential amendments as well. We have no objection to those amendments, and now I'm turned to my own views.
President, this bill seeks to empower the Director of Health to, under specified circumstances, issue a safety order to prohibit the supply of CHM, PCM, and CM products that may be injurious to public health, and a recall can be made. That, in simple terms, is to plug the existing loophole according to the sector, and that is to say, when the Act finds that the CM products and PCMs are posing potential threats to public health, the recall order will be made. Now, this is very much on a voluntary basis, but most of the trade will comply with the D-Act's request. This mechanism has been there all along and has proved effective. And the Bills Committee, we held a total of 5 meetings, and for 2 of them, we have heard views from the trade on the bill. This is very much an amendment to plug the existing loophole, and it has all along been in line with the existing practice. It will not have substantial impact on the operation of the trade. Why has it aroused much concern among the trade and also legislators? Every time when we heard the trade's views, many representatives of the trade appended, and it goes to show that we are doing our best to scrutinize the bill, and that is also because for a very long time the government has neglected the planning for CM sector in Hong Kong, and there's no target set as well. So as a result, the regulatory system is lagging behind what's happening, and the legislators and members of the trade had a lot of views on the bill, and that comes with good reasons. We understand that the legislators and the trade are not opposing the amendment this time. They want that a more comprehensive set of amendments can be put in place, as what the trade said at the public hearing. In Cap 549, that was drawn up in 1999, that was now 20 years on, and over the years there has not been any major review or amendments. We can imagine that 20 years ago, the market situation was very different from today's. Especially in recent years, there have been a lot of health products being launched on the market, and that has dealt a blow to the trade. I must point out that the regulatory framework is in the CMO, and there is a need to review it. According to Article 138 of the Basic Law, the SAR government should set up its own CM policies and strategies, and it goes to show that CM And Western medicine should be developed together with together. So some members at the Bills Committee said that the government should conduct a full-fledged review of the CMO, and the FTU supports that kind of suggestion, and we hope that the government can embark on this as soon as possible. In fact, legislators and the trade, like myself, support the amendments, especially after the amendment, the regulation is not just on the licensed traders, but for non-licensed and also illegal manufacturers of CM will be brought under regulation. Now, if, say, CM manufacturers refuse to comply with the safety order, they are criminally liable, and that can enhance the deterrent effect, and that can also help better protect the public. President, we all know that the FHB will be restructured, and there will be a CM office to be set up to coordinate the policies on the development of CM in Hong Kong. We hope that the review and the adjustment of CMO can be done as soon as possible, and then the PCM's definition can be further worked on, and we should expedite in dealing with other issues related to development of CM, say, for example, registration of health products and the regulations, the setting up of the CM hospital, CM practitioners, and CM park, and so on, and also long-term development and professional development for the trade. As we all know, the current term government would like to promote primary healthcare development, and CM can be an important part of primary healthcare in preventive the prevalence of diseases. We must make the best use of CM resources and talents in Hong Kong. We must set up a healthy development framework for CM in Hong Kong, and that it can be an important part of the development of primary healthcare. I hope that the government can heed the legislators, the trades, and the public's views, and review the CMO as soon as possible and promote the development of CM as soon as possible. So I speak in support of the amendment bill.
Dr. Helena Wong. President, I speak in support of the Chinese Medicine Amendment Bill 2017. I am a member of the Bills Committee to scrutinize the bill. And this Chinese Medicine Amendment Bill was tabled by the administration because of a court ruling in 2012. As a case of the director, in the case of Manhing Medical Supplies International Limited versus Director of Health 2015, then the Director of Health was found to have record medicine without proper powers, and only then the Department of Health realized that's the loophole. Now, if it's food safety, and we find a problem with a particular food item, the government has the power to recall the product because powers have been given to the Food and Environmental Hygiene Department. But when it comes to Chinese medicine, if something is wrong with the medicine, the legislation does not say the administration has the power to recall the product, and that's why the government rushed to submit this amendment bill. So that's the background to this bill. And of course, it is necessary to plug this loophole, so we support the government in doing so. And then after the amendment bill is passed, then the Director of Health will be empowered to issue Chinese medicine safety order to prohibit the sale of a particular Chinese medicine product or to recall it. Now, members of the Bills Committee all express support for this approach. And in the course of scrutiny, I've had many discussions with the administration at and outside the Bills Committee meeting. Now, we talk about recalling Chinese medicine with problems. To start with, we want to have Chinese medicine or Chinese herbal medicines that have no problems. Why are there problems And so in the first place, we had a lengthy discussion about how we strengthen regulation over the safety of Chinese medicine products. And then we must see, we'll try to see what the government needs to pay attention to. We want to have a safe testing system, so we don't need to recall Chinese medicines if they found to have problems, because they would have been stopped at the testing stage. Now, for the government to put in place a regulatory regime is a long road. For Chinese herbal medicines, in terms of their import, wholesale, retail, and testing, registration, and so on, there are many steps involved. So the government needs to pay attention to various details, and also the current system is not yet perfected, and there's still room for improvement. Now, for this Chinese Medicine Amendment Bill 2017, it doesn't really address the regulation of safety for Chinese medicine, which I just mentioned. So the Democratic Party hope this is just the first step taken by the administration. We don't want you to stop. It's like when we discussed the medical registration amendment bill yesterday. Okay, we passed it, but there's still plenty of follow-up work for the government. Now, the Democratic Party would like the Food and Health Bureau to enhance, to put in place a proper safety regulatory regime for Chinese medicines. There's room for improvement in several areas. First of all, for Chinese medicine and Chinese medicine herbal medicines, we need to set a tolerable safety limit for pesticides. That's the first thing. You need to update those limits. And secondly, the government should review the way it tests Chinese medicines. And thirdly, you need to regulate the sulfur content of Chinese medicines. Again, you need to set a tolerable limit, a maximum permitted limits, rather. And fourthly, you need to strengthen regulation on the import of Chinese medicine. And fifthly, you need to do more random testing. First, going back to the first point about the standards of maximum permitted limits of heavy metals and pesticide residues of Chinese herbal medicines. Now, I've been involved in discussions on food safety and pesticide residues and so on. I understand next year the administration would have completed the review and would table an amendment bill to us. We know that for food items, the permitted limits for heavy metal are rather outdated. Now, when it comes to Chinese medicines, we are talking about reviewing the standards, but then there's no targeting of Chinese medicines, and the government only includes 4 heavy metals. How come you don't do it like for food items? You cover many more heavy metals. For Chinese medicines, you only cover 4 heavy metals. And the Department of Health failed to give me a satisfactory answer at the Bills Committee meetings. Now, in the past few years, we have bought Chinese herbal medicines from various shops and sent them to laboratories for testing. We want to see what pesticides there and whether they exceed the limits. And from these samples, we'll find from time to time pesticides, sulfur dioxide, and heavy metal residues. In some cases, the amount was staggering. I'm sure the government's never tested some of these items. And in some cases, this is not food, it's not medicine either, like chrysanthemum. It's not in Schedule 1 or 2 for items to be regulated. But then the Center for Food Safety would not regard this as food items again, so they won't do tests. But then when we send them to the lab for testing, there are dozens of pesticides found. So we really taken by surprise, and we wouldn't know whether we should have a chrysanthemum drink again. Because sometimes when we feel it's a excessive heat, we might brew a cup of chrysanthemum tea. But this is exactly the kind of items that's not dealt with at all by the administration. And then we did another test of Chinese herbal medicines on their sulfur dioxide content. In 20 samples, we found in 8 samples, the sulfur dioxide level exceeded the limit of the Chinese Materia Medica of the PRC. Well, that's because in China they have set limits for sulfur dioxide, but in Hong Kong we don't have such limits. So these again omissions. So that's why I say we have plenty of gaps that need to be plugged. And today we have only plugged a small loophole. And I hope the Department of Health would do a better job in monitoring and regulating Chinese herbal medicines. Now there are 37 pesticides and 4 heavy metals which will be tested in Chinese herbal medicines. But for pesticides available in the market, there are over 300 types. Now for food, we say we must test the pesticide residue, then it covers far more types. And there may be matching too, say for planting a certain type of food. Usually those are the pesticides to be used, so there would be a permitted limit. But here, for Chinese medicine, we only test for 37 types of pesticides. And then there are some 300 types of pesticides used for farming. So how come we are only testing 37 types? So again, we see there's a huge loophole. So apart from pesticides and heavy metals left out from the test, I'd also like to talk about the testing method and the standards adopted. In the past few years, I found that the government has the inclination to water down the problem of exceedances of pesticide limits in Chinese herbal medicines. It's similar to the case of how we test lead content in water. I don't know why the government likes to do things in 2 phases. Very few places around the world do that. And for Chinese medicine, Hong Kong is a unique way to test it. And how do they test it? For testing of pesticide and heavy metal residues is done in 2 phases in Hong Kong. On the mainland, they also do for the first phase. That is, before the Chinese medicine is cooked, they will first test to see whether it contains any of the 37 types of pesticides and 4 heavy metals, and they also test the residue level. If the residue level of pesticides or heavy metals exceed a permitted limit, that means it is exceedance. And only then, but then they will say it's still not an exceedance. We will then do the second test. And what is the second test? They will then cook the Chinese medicine so it becomes a decoction. And then they will again test the test for pesticide and heavy metal residues. And if in a decoction the limits are exceeded, then that is an exceedance. But no one else around the world does that. Only Hong Kong does it. So this is such a great invention in Hong Kong. Of course, I'm mocking this arrangement, because even on the mainland, they don't do that. So is it the case that the Hong Kong government tries to water down the problem so they could open the door wider and have more relaxed criteria for importing Chinese medicines? Because the government says you don't actually eat the Chinese herbal medicine, you just drink the decoction. So that's why there's need for a 2-step approach in testing for residues. But then on the mainland, they talk about the standards of the herbal medicines in the raw state, that is before they're cooked. And if there is exceedance before it's cooked, then it's fine. We could test again whether there's exceedance after the medicine is cooked. But then after you cook it, you wouldn't know which herbal medicine has excessive residue, because with Chinese herbal medicines, you have a concoction of the herbs and you cook them together. So now you wouldn't know which herb has excessive residue. Now the government say it's more accurate to test for residues after in a decoction. Well, then you have to publish a standard that's acceptable around the world for decoction, and this standard could then be compared with the standards for the raw state of herbal medicine. But so far, we don't know there is such a set of standards laid down by the government. And the European Union, UK, and the US on herbal medicine samples, they set the highest permitted standards. For the Materia Medica Europe 8.6, they have set the limits for pesticide. And US Materia Medica 3.9, they also set such limits. Now in Chinese areas, there's much importance attached to pesticide limits in herbal medicines. Now, if we want to build a system that's similar to that for Western medicine, then we need to do a lot more. Chinese herbal medicines are involved, and then there will be confidence in the system. Now, I want to cover 5 points, but I've only I would like to make 5 points, but I've only covered 2 points. So later on, I'm going to talk about sulfur dioxide, etc. About Chinese medicine. Perhaps I'll pause here.
Mr. Xiu Ka-fei. Thank you, President. Chinese medicine's trade is one of the 82 constituents of my sector. So I've been following up the matter. Simply put, this bill empowers the Director of Health to do something when the sale of Chinese herbal medicines or Chinese proprietary medicines is going a threat to public health or is unfit for public consumption. Then there can be a safety order issued by the director, or there can be a recall order. That would plug the loophole, because at present the director has no power to recall problematic Chinese herbal medicines or Chinese proprietary medicines, and it said that this should be done to protect public health. But the industry also like the government to heed their concerns. First of all, once they have received a Chinese medicine safety order, would there be sufficient time for them to recall and carry out the order? And so, secondly, how do you set a reasonable scope of the products or medicine to be recalled? And if before the expiry of the time limit and the client of their operations fail to return the materials or herbal medicines, who will be responsible for the liability? And also they are concerned about the penalty levels. At the Bills Committee, I reflected all these concerns of the industry. In particular, I'm concerned about what the standards and criteria will be adopted by the director to assess whether the supplier are in compliance with the Chinese medicine safety order. Sometimes the supplier cannot recall and recover all the relevant products. Some might have been sold to shell companies or unlicensed shops. So when there's a problem, and they may not be able to find these clients, and sometimes the retailer is reluctant or unwilling to return the products to the wholesaler, distributor, or supplier, who should bear the responsibility of the non-compliance. And sometimes the material has already been sold to faraway countries, so how can they be recalled? So these are the concerns of the trade. So I hope the government will, after the commencement of this bill, of this ordinance for some time, there will be a further consultation with the trade. Moreover, during the examination of bill, the trade repeatedly expressed their dissatisfaction in certain aspects. For example, definition of Chinese proprietary medicine, registration of Chinese proprietary medicine, and so on. They would like to see a reviewed and of the Chinese medicine ordinance and amendments moved. If something has Chinese herbal medicine as major ingredients with other material added, say a little bit of a vitamin C, the product will fall outside the scope of the definition of Chinese herbal medicine. So it doesn't come under the definition of Chinese proprietary medicine in the Chinese medicine ordinance and are not covered by the ordinance. After this bill is passed, and when these products have problems, you are not able to ask for a recall. In the market, well, it's confusing to ordinary people, because as long as there are something, a little bit of other materials are added, such as vitamin C, the product will fall outside the scope of regulation. But these products may look very similar to the other Chinese proprietary medicines that are defined under the ordinance. They are maybe called tonic food items. So there's a need for the government to tell the public which is which, and what labels will be carried by Chinese proprietary medicines, and what are not actually Chinese proprietary medicine, although the packaging looks similar. There should be a special label on PCM so that people can make the right choice. I won't say which product is better than the other. Maybe both are good. But the government should let the public know the two are different. Chinese proprietary medicines may contain certain curative efficacy, but not the other products. So this is what is happening in the market right now. You have two different types of products. And as I've said, if you have a problem with those other products, you cannot record them. So this is a small loophole, although a small one, a small loophole in the system that you need to address. And I talk about the need for a comprehensive review of the Chinese medicine ordinance and the definition of PCM. The Chinese Medicine Board has set up an expert group with representatives from the trade, from relevant medical experts to follow up the issues and to chart the way forward. I hope this can be done. This task can be completed very quickly. because otherwise people will be kept in the dark for much longer as to what products they are purchasing. The Chinese Medicine Ordinance was enacted in 1999, and after some 20 years, some of the provisions are already found to be outdated. For example, for the beauty industry, we've heard from the news that they have the massage of using the fumation of certain Chinese herbal medicines. They would provide a service if they claim that doing certain kinds of massage, there's a health effect. It's not really allowed. And these beauty parlors don't know how to promote their services. What's the benefit of massage or pressure point massage and fumation? They have to tell people that there are certain health effects. If they are not allowed to, how can they market their services to the public? But you cannot say that I just ask for a fee of $200 to $300 because I'm going to touch your skin. There are some pending court cases involving the beauty parlors, and they are very concerned. They are worried whether they should say anything about the benefits or not. So you should tell people how properly they can inform their potential clients about their service. I spent a lot of time in the Bills Committee. Dr. Helena Wong and I and other members reflected the views from the trade. I know Dr. Wong is very concerned about public health, and she has high expectations, and she demands of high standards in food and food safety. But it's important, in my view, to balance such demands for the safety on the one hand and the needs of the trade on the other. She said at the Bills Committee that Chinese herbal medicines will be cooked, and then the concoctions will be tested. It said that the raw material, the Chinese herbal medicine materials, should also be tested to see if they pose any hazard to health. For people in Hong Kong, if they have consulted a Chinese medicine practitioners, you get a pack of Chinese herbal medicines with a lot of different materials in it, and you are instructed to cook the materials, and you would drink the concoction, which is the condensed form of the cooking material and liquid. But I have never heard people would then eat the Chinese herbal medicines after cooking. Usually they would just go to the bin. Of course, if anything is ingested, the material should be tested for the pesticide residues and heavy metals and so on and so forth. And the material is hazardous to health. Of course, it should be prohibited. But what is the purpose of testing the Chinese herbal medicines after cooking? You know, when people in the past fled from a war zone, that they ate anything, including roots and leaves. And they say if the cooking is done with a steel container, there's no way that you should ask for the steel container, the steel pot, to be tested. And also, lab tests cost you something, and I'm not even talking about the preparation of report and the necessary follow-up action. Lab tests carried out by the government would incur a cost. I would not disagree if people really take those herbal medicines, but I don't see the need for those Chinese herbal medicines to be tested after cooking. And there are different sources of supply with different ground conditions. And when these Chinese herbal medicines are imported and are subject to test, some of them may not be able to comply with standards, and they will not be imported. And then the relevant recipe may simply disappear. Let me stress again, we are very concerned about public health, but we have to be targeted and focused and be clear about what we want to do. Chinese herbal medicines are for the purpose of the preparation of a medicinal concoction, and you drink the concoction, the so-called drag, the so-called the cooked Chinese herbal medicine will not be eaten. That's what I want to say in this session.
Mr. Chen Hanpan, thank you, President. The CMO has been enforced, and all registered, all CHMs and PCMs sold in Hong Kong have to be tested and registered to protect public health. And now the CMO has taken effect for over 20 years, and it's marred with loopholes. There are so many problems arising from the CMO, and today the Secretary is proposing amendments to plug the loopholes. And among the many loopholes, just one loophole is being plugged with the amendment bill. And what is it about? It is to allow the department to ask for or instruct for recall of a certain product. And you find it strange that the original CMO didn't confer power to the department to instruct for a recall of the products. So it can be seen here that there are so many problems with the CMO, and the government doesn't have the power to ask for a recall of problematic or deficient products. Now, the government has lost a suit case, and that's why we are seeing this amendment bill. Now, for this plugging of the loophole this time, it is there to protect public interest, so DAB will support it. In the past several years, I've conducted many surveys, and I've come up with these two proposals, and one is on the development of CM 1 and 2, and that was prepared in 2014 and 2016 respectively. And in the past 2 years, I've been preparing for the third in the series, the third part in the series. And the government has heeded the suggestions in these two reports, and in the recent policies, the government has responded to our requests. In part 2 of this report, I suggested that we should help the SMEs to develop their GMP and the relevant registration. And I see that the government is giving some funding and allotting a piece of land in Science Park to build a facility for GMP, so that the trade can be helped in achieving GMP standards. Second is to helping them with registration. Now, if a CM product has to be registered, certain procedures have to be gone through. And right now, our scientific standards will not be able to tackle that. Well, they said that all you need to do is to get it to the test. Let me say what are the difficulties are. The CM products come with different formula. For example, Angelica and some other medicines have different ingredients, and if they are mixed together and decocted, then different substances may come up. And if we are going to test it, if there is Angelica and Rectus and Stragili, and then if we have to test these two substances together with the compound materials they have come up with, and it's very difficult. Now, CEM has a history of thousands of years, but scientific study in the world has only a history of several hundred years. So it's in the course of registration, it is very difficult to come up with a lab test report. It is extremely difficult. And actually, many formulas have been passed on from the Qing dynasty, and they have proven effective. And if they have to be tested in the laboratory and the test report has to be compiled, it's extremely difficult. So we have been moving very slowly as far as registration of CM is concerned. The government has heeded my views and is willing to allocate some funding to help to engage some professional bodies to help out. The first phase has been completed, and several CM products have been successfully registered. And I think this shows the government is willing to listen to views. Secondly, for the CM board in Hong Kong, it is just regulating and is not assisting the trade to develop. We've been talking about establishing a CM park for over a decade, but it's all empty talk. It's only until recently that the government is willing to set up a CM division or an office. If you just regulate a trade but not help them develop, then it is going nowhere. And Hong Kong is facing an enormous market worldwide. And without the assistance of the government, our CM sector cannot be further developed. And I think the government is moving in the right direction. Now, in my proposal, I've asked the government to set up a fund. And in the policy address and the budget, there is the proposal of setting up $500 million CM development fund. And, well, this amount is a far cry from what we asked for. But in any case, this is a good beginning. Now, I've complimented the government so far. So, Chen Hanpang, you should be very happy. The government is moving in the right direction. No, that's not the case. Because under the CMO, the greatest problem is a fundamental one. And that is to say, for the definition of there is a problem with the definition of proprietary Chinese medicine, PCMs. And as pointed out by Mr. Peter Schill, it just covers products which comes with CHMs. Now, of course, if a product has as its ingredients as CHMs, then it will be regulated. Now, maybe I would like to take this opportunity to cite an example for you. There was a pill called Tinhei Yun for women, and its ingredient comprises a chicken. In pharmacopoeia, the worldwide, chicken is considered a CHM, but then for a type of turkey, this is not considered a CHM. So our very smart traders would use this particular of chicken to make this Tinhei Yun, and well, 90% of this pill have CHMs as ingredient, but the only one which is not a CHM is Jinsao Gai. So under our CMO, it doesn't have to be registered. It is considered only a food. Now, Tinhei Yun should supposedly be a PCM, but with tosagai as a ingredient, it is not considered a PCM, and it doesn't have to be registered. Now, for the same product, Yun, they come with different brands, and for the one with the tosagai as an ingredient or the turkey, it doesn't have to be registered. So this is a type of the iceberg. And another pill, Angong Ngao Wang Yun. Well, we know that some of them come with a very famous brand, and it may cost $500 to $600 per tablet. But then in the market, there are a 7+1 product called by the same name, and it sells even more expensively than this famous brand. It comes with very nice packaging. And if you don't study really into it, you present it to a government officer, he won't be able to differentiate which is registered, which is not, which is more preferable, and the other not so preferable. So all these kind of products are available in the PCM and CM product market, and there are more and more such products. 3 years ago, I tried to understand from the trade what's happening. They said that there are several types of Angong Wang Yun, and they are considered food products. And recently, they told me that there are over 10 such products now. Now, you can imagine, in this market, there are registered products with the normal formula without any additional ingredients. But there are other products called by the same name with other unknown ingredients. So the letter group is using the existing loophole in the CMO. If we don't deal with this loophole, then fewer and fewer traders will get their products registered. So they would use a 7+1 approach and sell these products as food items. And it's going to be very hazardous because the PCMs comes with prescribed dosages. But then for food items, you can freely consume them in whatever amount you like. So that's going to be dangerous. So there are still so many loopholes in the registration mechanism, and this is the first step only that we're taking today. Another example, there are some other CM products which are, well, maybe you can try to find a popular CM product. Maybe you can add in vitamin C. Well, sorry, it doesn't have to be registered then, because it's not purely CM product, because it comes with vitamin C. It doesn't have to be registered. So this is a very ridiculous situation, and this is a loophole which we are seeing. I hope that the government now, is now conferred the power to instruct for recall of problematic products. Now, the government is now empowered to ask for recall of certain products, but the market is filled with fraudulent products, which adopt the 7+1 formula approach. You wouldn't be able to recall the letter because they aren't being regulated by the CMO. Now, some drug manufacturers have registered their products, but then they are also making food items which are similar to the drugs. I got confused myself. They come from the same licensed manufacturers. So can licensed drug manufacturers make drugs? Nobody gives me the answer. If food items are to be made, the manufacturers have to obtain a food factory license. But then for food items produced by drug manufacturers, do they have to come with the relevant licenses? Please answer me. Say if the drug manufacturers cannot do that, well, if you prohibit them from doing that, that may not be the best solution. All they need to do is to get drug factory license and set up a food factory, and that's it. And they can save up a lot by using that approach, and they can be very flexible in the sale of such products, and they have to not to be regulated. So this is a very distorted market for the CM traders who are really good, sincere in running their business, that is very unfair to them. They've been trying to abide by the rules and so on, but they will be phased out by the market progressively. And in the market, they will soon progressively perish. Now, we used to have over 10,000 products on the waiting list to be registered. Now, the number has come down to only 6,000. So I don't know how many in the end will be registered. They don't want to get registration because it's going to be difficult, or it's maybe because the market is filled with this 7+1 food items, so there is no more room for their survival. So in this segment, I would like to tell the government, we must ban food items which would like to pretend to be PCMs. If that is not done, we will be seeing a very distorted market. And some tourists in Hong Kong may buy such PCM-like products. And then when they get back to their own countries, then people will say that these are fake products. And that's going to be big problematic. Our reputation will be substantially tarnished. Why people come to Hong Kong to shop? Because we have good international standards, but unfortunately, in terms of PCMs, I think we are, being stagnant here in that regard. We are not doing anything. So this food, the secretary, you have a heavy responsibility here, and I think, and I believe I hope that you can help the trade deal with these problems so that we can bring the development of PCM back on the right track and can develop further.
如果冇，現在我請食物。
Now I would like to ask the Secretary for Food and Health to reply, and then the debate will come to an end. President, first of all, I would like to thank Ms. Alice Mack, Chairperson, and other members of the Bills Committee and the Electoral Secretariat for their efforts in ensuring that the scrutiny of the Chinese Medicine Amendment Bill 2017 was carried out smoothly. The bill seeks to confer power on the Director of Health to make a Chinese medicine safety order to prohibit the sale of Chinese medicine and related products and recall such products in specified circumstances, and to ensure that the CMSO is implemented smoothly to safeguard public health. The director will be empowered to order any person, regardless of whether he is a licensed trader under the Chinese Medicine Ordinance, CMO, Cap 549 or not, who has sold Chinese herbal medicine, CHM, proprietary Chinese medicine, PCM, and intermediate products to recall such CHMs, PCMs, and intermediate products from the POG market, and to prohibit by order the sale of the same. In addition to empowering the Director of Health in making CMSO, the government also proposes introducing an appeal mechanism for a person bound by the CMSO to lodge an appeal against the director's decision. Under the current legislation, licensed CM traders, i.e. CHM wholesalers, PCM wholesalers, and PCM manufacturers, are already required under CM Regulation Cap 549F to set up and maintain a system to recall PCMs, CHMs, and intermediate products generated during the manufacturing of PCMs. Yet, in a judicial review case, the court concluded that the Director of Health had no legal power to make an instruction to recall the relevant products. Moreover, the government has reviewed the CMO and found that there is currently no provision under the CMO or its subsidiary legislation providing that an unlicensed trader must, as directed by the director, of Health carry out recall actions regarding PCMs or CHMs which may pose threats to public health, such as CHMs being distributed without license, as well as unregistered PCMs being distributed, etc. Therefore, the government considers it necessary to amend the CMO and its subsidiary legislation to plug the existing loopholes. The Director of Health will therefore be conferred statutory power to order any person to recall CHMs or PCMs in the market which may pose threats to public health in order that the relevant regulation may be strengthened. The bill was introduced to the LegCo in June last year. The BC held 5 meetings. I am pleased that the BC supports the proposed amendments in the bill and the proposed technical and textual amendments to be moved by the administration at the committee stage. I would now like to discuss the major provisions in the bill. First, the bill proposes to add new sections 138B and 138I to stipulate clearly the forms and effects of a CMSO, variation order, and revocation order to facilitate traders' understanding of their responsibilities and the operational details of the orders. The bill proposes to amend Section 141 of the CMO to provide for an appeal mechanism whereby an appeal can be lodged by those bound by an order against the director's decision to make an CMSO to ensure that all cases are handled fairly and justly. Regarding penalty, the bill proposes to add new sections 138K to 138L to specify that a person bound by a CMSO who fails or refuses to comply with any requirements in the CMSO commits an offense and is liable to a fine at level 6, i.e. $100,000 and imprisonment for 2 years. The proposed penalty is the same as the existing penalties for not complying with most other provisions under the CMO. Moreover, to ensure the effective implementation of a CMSO, the bill also proposes amending the relevant provisions, including amending Section 159 on serving a notice and an order, specifying the way to serve a notice or order, such as delivering it in person, by mail, or leaving it at the relevant address, and amending the provisions in the CMO on setting up and maintaining a system of control to enable the rapid and, as far as practicable, complete recall of CHMs, PCMs, and or intermediate products. The Bills Committee has discussed the implementation details of the CMSO, including the scope to be covered, principles for making the order, recall procedures, and appeal mechanism, etc. Although some members have raised issues on regulation of CM related to other parts of the CMO, members generally support the bill and do not object to the government's amendments. The Bills Committee held 2 public hearings to meet with the relevant groups. Deputations and individuals attending the hearings indicated their wish for the bill to be passed as early as possible to better protect public health. Concerning consultation, the Department of Health conducted a 7-week public and trade consultation in January and February 2017, during which a meeting with 16 Chinese medicine traders associations and 6 briefing sessions for individual licensed CM traders were convened. The public and trade generally recognized the need for legislative amendments and support the bill. Now, next, and I would like to thank the members for your support of the bill and your comments raised. And now I would like to briefly respond to your views. I would like to thank Mrs. Alice Mack. She is the chairman of the Bills Committee for raising her views on how the government should further develop a CM. The government is very concerned about the long-term planning and positioning of CM, as CM is more recognized by the society as a whole. The government thinks that there is a need to set up a dedicated CM office to tackle the issue, and it will work on overall policy planning and coordination for the development of the CM trade. It will liaise with the trade and coordinate efforts to promote CM development in Hong Kong. It will coordinate all the policies and measures concerned. It will also be responsible for the planning of the CM hospital and the relevant tendering work. And Mr. Chen Hanpan referred to the $500 million dedicated fund, and that is also being coordinated by the CM office, and it will be used for developing CM to conduct research and study, promote knowledge exchange and cross-market collaboration, etc. We will also help local CM traders to manufacture and register PCMs. Mrs. Alice Mack and Mr. Chen Hanpang also talked about the need for a full review of the CMO, and the public health should be further protected. For any amendment of CMO, we must discuss with the trade to understand the various stakeholders' opinions on the existing CMO before we can chart the details for the review and the relevant timetable. Now, through the CMCHK, we'll be talking to the various members who come from the sector, and also the academia and so on. We will talk to them about drawing up policies to promote the long-term development of CM, and that would also cover views expressed towards the present CMO. Then DH will continue to have a dialogue with the trade on this, and we want to strike a balance between protecting public health and supporting the development of CM. We would try to improve and perfect the regulatory mechanism for CM. We understand that the amendment bill is just the first step. We'll continue to improve on our regulatory mechanism for CM and report to members at appropriate junctures on the way forward. And I would like to thank Mr. Peter Shiu and Mr. Chen Hanpang for raising possible loopholes in the system now, for example, for health products and PCMs and the regulatory matters, etc. And as I mentioned, we said that we will strengthen the regulation on these. And the Bills Committee notes that it doesn't come within the scope of the present amendment bill, but we are very concerned about products which simulate PCM being sold on the market. We will try to strike a balance between protecting public health and further developing the trade. We would review the definition of PCM in order to strengthen our regulatory control on PCMs. Different stakeholders will be involved. The CMCHK and the CM board under it has set up a working group to fully review this and provide advice on that. And we would also be reporting the latest progress to members in the future. Now, internationally, there is no definition on health product, or there is no standardized regulatory approach. Based on the needs and the circumstances of different places, different regulatory mechanisms are put in place. The government is now adopting a multi-pronged regulatory approach, and through a series of ordinances to regulate these products. And depending on the nature of the individual products and the ingredients and the claimed functions and usage, packaging, etc., we would be having a targeted regulatory approach towards them. This is a multi-pronged approach that we're adopting, but as I said, we have set up a working group to look specifically into the issue. And I would like to thank Mr. Peter Shiu for raising issues relating to recalls. And the CHM wholesalers, PCM wholesale and PCM manufacturers under the regulations have to set up and maintain a control mechanism in order that once there are deficient products which are dangerous, injurious to health and not fit for human consumption, can recall the products comprehensively ASAP in order to help the trade set up a recall proper calling system. The CM board in 2005 has drawn up the recall guidelines for CM products to provide guidelines for the CM traders. Of course, if CM traders have questions on this, they can call and liaise, talk to the DH. And under the guidelines, the traders should, as far as practicable, recall the problematic products. And the relevant the traders should monitor the progress and effectiveness of the recall actions. For every recall action, it should be treated in a unique way, and we have to be mindful about the nature of the problem and the client's safety and the sales network to formulate the recall strategies to mitigate the risk, the relevant risk. The recall action should be done in the shortest possible time. For every recall action, it should be, considered a unique action. And in issuing CMSO, the DH, or in issuing the recall order, the DH will have full communication with the trade, bearing in mind the network of sales, the nature of the products, etc., and also whether the products will pose slight or serious threats to human health or may lead to even to deaths before coming up with the appropriate recall actions. Such guidelines have proven to be effective all along, and in the latest amendment bill is really to confer the Director of Health the power to instruct for a recall, and it will not change the original recall procedures put in place all along. Mrs. Helena Wong also referred to certain issues and concerns on the market surveillance of CHM products and quality control, and she has particularly talked about decoction of CHMs and also the surveillance practices of the DH. Let me try to respond briefly to this. Now, the DH now adopts a two-pronged approach in testing CHMs. First, we would conduct a regular market surveillance program to have random sampling testing, and then we'll also be using a targeting approach. We will try to source CHMs through different channels, adverse drug reaction reporting system, referral by other government departments, and complaints from the public. We'll conduct testing on all those. And through the routine surveillance market, we will get random samples of CHMs for testing, and these will cover the 31 CHMs in Schedule 1 and 574 CHMs in Schedule 2. And every year, we will obtain 54 samples for testing annually, and the items covered will include pesticide residues and heavy metals, and also morphological identification to monitor the safety and quality of the CHMs. Now, the DH, after the conducting a risk assessment, will also get random samples of CHMs for monthly testing. It will also send staff to the different wholesalers, retailers, and traders to buy CHMs. And we cover all of Hong Kong in doing that. We will get random samples on a monthly basis for testing of CHM products from wholesalers and retailers, etc. And of course, when it comes to the CHM being in the form of decoction before it is tested, well, this form is closer to the form in which CHM is consumed by human beings, and the relevant risk. The DH thinks this is an appropriate approach, and for the testing methodology and the scope of the testing has been approved by the CM Board and the Scientific Committee of the HKCMMS. And the administration will emphasize that for the testing results of the stage 1, it will be used as for screening purposes. And that doesn't mean that the relevant samples would definitely pose threats to human health. Now, say in the second stage, when we found that the testing results showed that the samples exceed the maximum level of pesticide residue allowed, the DIC will investigate further into that and will adopt a risk management, proceed with the risk management procedures. So, President, you can see that the amendment bill seeks to enhance the regulatory level of CM in Hong Kong. And in drafting of the bill, we have fully consulted the relevant stakeholders, and we thank the Bills Committee for supporting the amendments proposed in the bill. And I urge members to pass the bill so that we can perfect the CM regulatory mechanism in Hong Kong as soon as possible and to better protect public health.
And I'll put the question to you that the Chinese Medicine Amendment Bill 2017 be read a second time. Will those in favor please raise their hands? Those against, please raise their hands. I think the question is agreed by a majority of the members present. I declare the motion passed. Chinese Medicine Amendment Bill 2017. Council now becomes Committee of the Whole Council.